welcome to today's edition of the Sports Clinic podcast. With me today is Behram Qazi. I'm Sadi Raza. He's a upcoming cricket correspondent. He wants me to say upcoming, but he's already made it. He works for grassroots cricket for Pro Sports as well as the Jared Kimber podcast. It's a privilege to have him, and as you can see from what he's wearing, on the eve of the World Cup, we will be discussing the Pakistani cricket team with him. Welcome.
Yes, lovely to be here, Sadi Bhai, or Doc. That's how I know you from Twitter. And it's an absolute privilege to be over here. And it was quite hectic these days, but then you asked so nicely, I couldn't possibly have said no. So extremely excited for whatever we're going to talk about right now. And let's get that ball rolling.
Perfect. I appreciate it. We'll jump right in. The Asia Cup. Can we take anything from this absolute farce of a tournament? The team put on more airline miles than business travelers do. Sleep cycles were thrown off. Games were rescheduled, canceled, and then ad hoc added to reserve days. Is there anything to take away? The one downside that I look at was that you suffered a loss of confidence and mental and emotional fatigue for what? But I'll throw it out to you. Was there anything we can take away, and was it worth it? Was it worth the exercise?
Where do I even start? I mean, to begin with, the tournament itself, I think, was a farce, as you very correctly described it. And I'm all for the Asia Cup. I think it could be something similar to what we have in football as the Euros or the Copa America. It could have that impact. But if you're scheduling it right before a World Cup, it's really, in essence, a warm-up tournament, and it kind of loses its sheen. And I think that Pakistan just simply didn't treat it as that. They treated it like it was the World Cup. And look, I'm all for getting your settled 11 in before the World Cup and play them regularly. But you already had that. You were already doing that. And to play all of your seamers, and I'm not saying that Naseem Shah got injured because of that. Sure. I'm just saying that the workload wasn't managed well, right? Whatever the reasons behind his injury may be. But you were playing your entire team versus Afghanistan, Nepal, Bangladesh. And I just don't see the science behind that, because you want to preserve the miles in your fast bowlers' legs, and you know how important your pace attack is. That trio of Naseem, Shaheen, and Haris, people were saying that was the best trio that Pakistan had since Wasim, Waqar, and Shoaib. But even there is, there's something worth noting, that neither of those three, Wasim, Waqar, and Shoaib, played together in each other's prime. Correct. So maybe you had something that was bigger than that. And Pakistan, look, if we look at Pakistan's scoring rates, I'm not saying that Pakistan are timid, but on a relative scale, if you look at other nations like England, India in bilaterals, not tournament cricket, but bilaterals, and then even South Africa and Australia recently, they're going much faster, and they're playing really, really aggressive cricket. And Pakistan is, if not conservative, at par, at best, you'd have to say. So my concern is that after losing Naseem, your batting will have to probably compensate for Naseem Shah, his absence, because you can't replace that guy. All phase brilliance, brilliant with the new ball, in the death, in the middle, pinpoint accuracy, you name it. The shape he was getting on the ball, it was just, awe-inspiring. That's how good Naseem was. He had 32 wickets and 14 ODIs at less than 17 apiece. Those are satanic numbers, okay? That's just how good he was. And the takeaway over here is that you've got to manage your workload better. Don't put all of your eggs in the Asia Cup basket, right? And I suppose the good part was that some of the batters got runs. Some of them, I suppose, Babar got a little bit of confidence, but it was against Nepal. Imam had been scoring regularly. And not much to take away, honestly. Pakistan lost more than it gained, and that damned reserve day. The more I talk about it, the more infuriated I get, because Pakistan lost everything thanks to that reserve day. And it's just, look, but the problem I have with the way cricket is run, the way it's monopolized by the BCCI, is that it's gotten so blatant. They're not pretending anymore. It's just in your face. And
Faustian bargain they made when they went to the Big Three model. Let's touch very quickly on this workload management. To me, as an outsider, it seems like it's a mindset that whether it's the card players who are not comfortable with the idea of other people taking their place, or it's something that we've not done, but it's something that you have to look at in the way the cricket calendar is being compressed, the number of franchise leagues, and other teams have started to do it. What needs to change? Is it the player's mindset? Is it the manager's mindset? Is it a combination of the two? And is it weighed down by the years of baggage because of exactly that players have this chip on their shoulder? They're afraid of losing their spot because historically we have been fickle when it comes to basically moving players almost as if they're chess pieces on a board. Well, it's your turns over. We'll try and give him a shot, and he just wasn't too great for the last two games. We'll move him out. We'll give him a shot. Go ahead, touch on that.
Yeah, I think fickle is correct, and we've seen historically in Pakistan there's a lot of insecurity when it comes to your position within the team. But I'd like to think that all of these guys, or at least 9 out of the 11 who are expected to start in this World Cup, shouldn't have had those insecurities. They had these places, locked in, and nothing was going to change that. Look, I don't blame these players. If they want to go play in the Canada League or the America League or the CPL, they don't get paid enough. And they get paid peanuts compared to all other cricketers from all other nations across the globe. I'm talking about test playing nations. Even the Bangladesh players make more money. And very recently, it came to light that the players aren't getting a large chunk of the revenue that comes to the PCB. In fact, they've settled for what, 5%?
3%.
And 3% or 5%. It's piss poor. That's what it is. And I think the one thing that Pakistan or the PCB, or well, not the PCB, but Pakistan cricket and its cricketers definitely need is a players' union. You see it across other big countries, and someone needs to be the spokesperson for them, that they can have a chip or some sort of say in the bargaining discourse or bargaining table. So that's, I think, one of the things that could potentially fix this. Better contracts could fix this. Now they released a list of contracted players. I don't know if you've noticed this or picked up on this or not, but test cricketers haven't been valued. No. And if you've got a cricketer like Naseem Shah, yeah, go ahead.
There's no money in test cricket anymore from their perspective. So that's how they view the cricket players as revenue generators, and they will pay them accordingly.
And I mean, that should change, right? Because correct. I think in the long run, ODI cricket might not survive as, painstaking reality that is. That's what conventional wisdom suggests, because the money really isn't there at all. Test cricket has that purity to it. It has that prestige to it. I do see it surviving amongst the top nations, but you've got to prioritize it somehow. Yes. And if, I don't think seniority has anything to do with their contracts. If you have a player who is starting in all 3 formats, like Naseem Shah, you don't give him category B, you give him category A. If you've got a sure shot starter in test cricket like Saud Shakil, who's had a tremendous year in the format, he's broken a lot of records, you have to reward that. Give him B at least. Don't give him C, give him B. So I'm not happy with the way they've structured this, and I feel for Pakistan's players, and I want them to play leagues as well, but I want them to pick their battles wisely. Like, you don't have to go and play every league. You try to bag the max contracts in a few, and then you kind of manage your workload accordingly. But also, Sadi bhai, players are always going to want to play every game. We know that, correct. Right?
No, I love talking about the business of sports, and yeah. I think this needs to be a wider discussion, and I want to have it with you because I think you bring up multiple points about players unionizing, the importance of players unionizing, especially given the fact that it is a very narrow window to earn money. But I digress. Let me jump straight into the donut hole, the bagel, the polo mitt, which is the middle order bowling and the lack of production. So they've had a few warm-up games. To use Allen Iverson's quote, we're talking about practice, but it's still a way to sort of judge the team. And to me, when I look at the middle overs, I don't see either containment or aggression to the point where we can take wickets. And in a 50-over match, that's a large chunk of the game where you're basically just going through the motions almost as a batting team, as a bowling team. And in today's day and age of analytics and video information, the other teams will have picked up on this, that this is the perfect time to counterpunch, because even if we lose 2, 3, even 4 wickets in the first 15 overs, we have this big chunk where we can basically consolidate and set up our death. Even in T20, we saw this issue with Pakistan in the Asia Cup last year, where basically Sri Lanka in the final were down a few wickets, but then they counterattacked in the middle overs and sure enough won the game. Talk to me about how they address this sort of this bagel, this donut that I call in their bowling strategy.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very valid point to raise, and it is a cause for concern. Let's not kid ourselves, right? We can all be positive and optimistic and, support our team, but it's important to criticize where it's relevant, and the middle overs have been a bone of contention. Babar Azam has spoken about it in the press conference as well, and I hope he has some sort of strategy to counter it. But look, the problem is that if you're going to go with two spinners, right now, you're probably going to have to, trust both Nawaz and Shadab just because of the experience factor and the fact that you haven't particularly groomed Abrar. And if you want to play Osama, then you are compromising on some of your batting, which of course Shadab provides. So it's a pickle. It's a tough one. But what I'd say is that you spoke about other teams countering this, right? And how they're, looking to attack and go for the jugular in the middle overs. But let me rewind the clock to 2017 Champions Trophy. Yep. The reason Pakistan won that tournament is because of Hassan Ali's middle overs mayhem. Okay, he was that guy. When you need a wicket, you go to Hassan Ali. They've made that about Haris Rauf now, but it was originally always Hassan Ali's line, right? And I think that, and this is a bit left field, I'm not saying that I know better than the management or whatever, but this is just me thinking out loud. And I've mentioned this in a few podcasts as well, that what if, the fact that Naseem is gone, he was keeping things tight from one end, keeping batters on the back foot, bowling those hard lengths, and allowing both Shaheen and Haris Rauf to attack from the other end. If perhaps you open with Mohammad Nawaz, you get rid of some spin overs at the start, you keep things tight, you allow Shaheen to attack, and then even Haris Rauf to come in first change and attack, you keep Nawaz there for 5 to 6 overs. And then in the middle, maybe you can bowl Hassan Ali, where he has been effective in the past, but Hassan's been decent with the new ball in the warm-ups. Now, I know we should never make too much of what we see in the warm-ups, but I was speaking to Atif Nawaz, who, of course, if someone doesn't know, works for the BBC and was also working with the Birmingham Bears.
We did our England and Australia preview together on this.
Lovely. Yeah, and Atif Bhai is a wealth of, information and knowledge, a wonderful bloke as well. So he was telling me that Hassan at Birmingham or at Edgbaston was working on the wobble ball. Now, I don't know, Doc, why don't we work on this more? Because if you look at revolution in cricket, like what has revolutionized fast bowling over the years, right? And reverse swing is obviously one of the first things that comes to mind. But ever since the reverse swing, especially after 2 new balls in ODI cricket, the wobble seam delivery is that thing, right? Which has changed the game, and it continues to do so. And for anyone who follows Jared Kimber's work, he calls it the pace playing pandemic, because ever since people got good at executing the wobble ball, averages have gone down in Test cricket. So that's something definitely worth taking note of. Now, according to Atif Bhai, and you can quote him on this, not me, he has been working, Hassan, on the wobble seam delivery. Now, if he gets to land that, much like Pandya was and Siraj was in the Asia Cup, which is also important to note, of course, it's ironic that Mohammad Asif was the pioneer, and yet here we are talking about Pakistani bowlers not executing that delivery more frequently. So I really hope that we get to see some wobble seam from Hassan, and he's able to, nail those. And if he bowls those tight lines rather than going for those magic deliveries, because we need one of those bowlers, right? We need someone to hold up that end. And if he's in the middle overs, then perhaps he can potentially go for some of those magic deliveries as well to create inroads. But I'm really, really keen to see how Hassan fares, because a lot all of a sudden depends on him, right? Now, sure, I mentioned how Pakistan's batting should be, or probably will have to compensate for Naseem's loss. But Hassan Ali, he's here because of experience, not because of form. And Zaman Khan was the other option. He's someone who has been terrific in T20 cricket, but bowling a 10-over spell, not a 10-over spell, but bowling 10 overs in one innings is a different ball game altogether, right? I'm fine with that pick, but it's yet to be seen how Pakistan kind of balance out their overs, all 50 of them.
Right,
and
that's
if
the challenge for them, is how to get through 50 overs, because as you said, the difference between bowling 4 overs and 10 overs is that the lack of variation and the lack of consistency will get exposed over. You just have so many more balls to bowl. You mentioned something about Nawaz starting taking the new ball in the beginning. Do you think this management and this captain, who has been criticized about being conservative, would be brave enough to take that approach in ODI in a World Cup?
It's a fantastic question. Look, often gets, pushed around. And I've been asked this question a few times. And I think Babar is a splendid leader, a great rallier of men, and he has gelled this unit perfectly. Everyone celebrates each other's successes, and they look like a family. And they actually do. And I know that there was some news recently that there was a spat. Look, spats happen in families, right? So not something that people should make too much of. And you can clearly see that the team is doing all right. But as a tactician, he has lacked. He's gotten better with time. I'll give him that. And I've noticed this with Babar Azam, that when Pakistan are on top, he feels a lot more comfortable. As soon as Pakistan kind of lose the plot and something's not going according to plan, Babar is reactive and not proactive, right? We've seen that. And he tends to be a bit defensive. I'm not even just talking about the slipper, right? If the slip fielder is part of this, but
he goes into
attacking fields.
You're right.
Yeah, attacking fields don't always mean a slip fielder. They could be close-in fielders. Look at Ben Stokes' fields in Test cricket, and you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm saying, right? You've got to think outside of the box, and you've kind of got to go for wickets, because Pakistan is a team which is good at strike bowling. Sure, we've lost one of our main guys, but that's still our strength. And these surfaces will aid batting. So here's my concern. If other teams are on top and Babar is defensive, then Pakistan might be chasing 325, 330 more often than not. Now, they do possess the capability to chase down those totals, but day in, day out, have my concerns over there, have a bit of reservations, right? So that is something that they'll have to look at. And Babar, I hope, for all the learning that he's had, and he's been honest about these things, that there are areas, particularly, the middle overs, bowling, which need to be looked at. I hope that he has some or 3 different plans in place. I don't want him to just have a plan A. I want him to be thinking all across the board. And I mean, I know that it polarizes opinion, Babar Azam's captaincy. I'm not saying he's a great captain. He's a good captain if you take all things into consideration. But this is the litmus test. This is what it all builds up to. And even if this World Cup will not define his legacy as a batter, because I don't think he needs to prove much, a title would be nice, but he has one in the Champions Trophy 2017, right? As a leader, as a captain, this is the litmus test. And now Pakistani public tends to have this sort of, they just want to win, right? And nothing other than a World Cup will suffice. But if Pakistan make it to the semifinals, I'll call it a success for Babar Azam, right? Because after that, it's a toss-up.
I think you raise a good point, but it goes to one of my theories in sports, whereby the thought process and the theory that I have is that after a certain amount of time, you need to change the voices in the dressing room, in the players' ears. He's been captain for 3 years. He's had success. They've come close, obviously a T20 final last year, a T20 semifinal the year before, which they probably should have won. He's been on the precipice. But if they should falter in this World Cup and not reach a semifinal, I think that question needs to be asked. But again, we'll touch on that later.
Sorry, I'm interjecting. I'm just going to quickly finish off my thought over here. If Pakistan fail to or manage to reach the semifinal, I think after every 4-year cycle, especially when it comes to the 50-over World Cup, because it is still cricket's most coveted trophy and the most prestigious prize or silverware, I think that there needs to be, a committee or some people who are major stakeholders. They all need to sit down and have a professional evaluation of Babar's time as captain. And these are the times where you kind of, if you want to take a different route, that's when you do it, at the start of a cycle, not at the end of one. And Pakistan has had this penchant to mess things around, last minute, which I'm glad that they haven't done. I was scared in the middle that they might do something stupid.
No, they made the right decision to stick with him. Yeah. You dance with the girl you brought.
Absolutely.
No question about that. But you're right that at the end of the cycle, I think it's an evaluation is due, because new voices, some voices get stale.
And that doesn't diminish Babar.
Correct. It doesn't.
Absolutely not. That's just how things should be.
And there've been a litany of great batters who weren't as great captains. Obviously with India, it's everyone mentioned Sachin, but it's not uncommon. The pressures are very different. And especially in a 50-over game, that's a long time as a captain to try and focus in on strategy. And then of course you have to not just bat, but you are the linchpin. You are the number 1 ODI. That's a lot of pressure. And you wonder about him being able to compartmentalize those, because they are unique skills. And on one side, the batting is almost God-given genius level, but it still requires compartmentalization.
I've got a question for you, Doc. I
Sure.
don't know if this is your area of expertise, but since you're in medicine and you probably speak to a lot of people who are in that particular discipline, if players come so close and are yet so far, they lose by the barest of margins, they just cannot get over that final hurdle, which has been Pakistan's, case in a lot of tournaments. You can think about the Asia Cup last year, the T20 World Cup final, that semi-final. They've had a fair few of these instances. Does that make you more battle-hardened as an individual, or does that weigh, counterproductively on your mental health?
I think there is something to, you need to suffer to eventually conquer the mountaintop. There is that in sport. It's in different sports as well. Messi.
The Champions League is an example, right? No team that has made the final has won it right away. They've lost first.
Messi needed to have heartbreak with Argentina, whether it was the Copa America and the World Cup, etc., to then finally be able to conquer his demons. Alex Ferguson needed to lose a bunch of Champions Leagues before he figured out that you have to play differently in Europe, and then in 99 he won. Pakistan actually reached the semis of the 87, 83, and 79 World Cups before they then won in 92. So I do think there is something to the journey. And in that journey, you grow and you learn how to win. One has to learn how to win, and often in losing, you learn how to win. So I definitely think there is that. I do hope that just the bitterness of losing the final last year sort of propels them, gives that extra. But you need luck. At the end of the day, once you get to the semis, it's just two coin flips. Anything can happen. You need a little bit of luck, and no team has ever won a title in any sport without luck at some point in the stage. I wanted to ask you about Fakhr and Shadab, about form issues, and what would you do, and two, what you think they will do. Would you slot them in automatically into your 9 games, or would you potentially change them out if you saw after a certain number of games neither of them are sort of performing to the level commensurate with their expectations? And of course, one is a vice captain. And then the second part is, what do you think management will do?
Yeah, so look, I think both myself and the management would start with them. You've had these players playing for Pakistan consistently for the last 6 years, right? And Fakhr, Imam, and Babar has been such a formidable and potent top 3. Pakistan became a top 3 heavy team, which have they ever done that in history? I don't know. I don't think so. And I think that's spectacular. But there's no denying that Fakhr Zaman is at a loss of form, and quite a bad one as well. But it was only the start of the year when he hit 3 consecutive tons, and they were in batting friendly conditions, which you're going to get now. Now, don't let those Sri Lankan results fool you, because those wickets were slow and low, and Fakhr relies on true bounce, and Fakhr will get true bounce, at least in Hyderabad he will, based on what I've seen. So he's a wild card. He's a dynamic player. If he comes good, Pakistan wins more often than not. He also has a penchant to go big in, big games.
Big games.
Remember the Champions Trophy final. We remember the semi-final versus Australia, those 6s versus Mitch Starc. And I would back him. I think the management would back him. And I think that if, you want to have that conversation, you have it post-World Cup. And like you said, if things are extremely dire...
You'd give him carte blanche, and so would management.
Yeah. And I honestly... how we always quote Imran Khan of how he had that conversation with Inzi that I don't care about your scores. I just like that 4 you hit, and you're going to play every game. Even if you're sick, you're going to play. And he played a match-winning knock in the semi-final when he was sick, right? If I'm not wrong.
You're absolutely right. So he's more still one-dimensional, because he's just a batter. How about Shadab? Because he's not just one-dimensional. He's an all-rounder. You rely on him in the middle overs, as we've spoken, and you're also relying on him for his batting prowess. How much... Yeah. But he's your vice captain. How much is he also? Are you and management both giving him full rope?
He does start for me, but I'm not going to give him the same sort of rope that I would give Fakhr. Because Fakhr, even if he fails, you've got enough protection. Shadab, you are relying on for middle over wickets, right? If he's not getting you those consistently, and if he's going for plenty of runs, then you're losing out on a lot. And then it's unfair on Osama as well, who has earned this spot in the team. I know that a lot of people wanted Abrar, and I agree that he brings the mystery element, but you prepared Osama. Osama had taken 28 wickets in the Pakistan Cup at an astronomical average, and a very miserly average. Sorry, astronomical would be the opposite. But, he's earned his place. He's been brilliant in leagues. And if you remember his debut, those dismissals of Kane Williamson and Tom Latham, they were dream dismissals, right? He has the quality. He's a different kind of leg spinner. He's a tall guy. He's not Shadab Khan's competition. They don't bring in the same sort of value.
Does he play for you in your 11 in place of Nawaz, Osama?
Not quite yet.
He's your 12th man. He's the guy who's next in if someone falters.
So I am of the opinion that you should go with a deeper batting lineup, and both Nawaz and Shadab provide that to you. And of course, if they are bowling absolute garbage, then you can sort of think of other teams. Another school of thought is that you play all three of them. I don't know if Pakistan is ever going to do that or not, but you probably manage that in Chipok. Chennai might be.
Who would you take out if you played all three of them?
No, I wouldn't. Like, if I played all three of them, I'd play all three of them, but I would at the moment take Osama out. I'd just start off with Nawaz and Shadab.
If you played all three, who would you take out?
Probably the Saud or Salman position, right? That would be the one.
So let's go to that question. On that position, my theory is that Salman sort of had his chances, didn't take them as much as Saud Shakil did. Is that where you and management think is what's going to happen?
I would have had Haris ahead of one of those guys, honestly, Saud or Salman. And because if Rizwan gets a niggle in game, who's going to keep him on? Not too comfortable with that. Plus, in Haris, you also got a brilliant sub fielder. We know that from that catch he took.
Why didn't they do that? Why did they put him in reserve whereby he now needs an injury to happen?
I think that they had given the confidence to Salman that he's going to be there, and they weren't too keen on reverting on that decision. And Saud Shakil was a panic selection because he plays spin well, and we know that he does, and he's also shown us that he has an attacking side to him. I would play him versus the Netherlands, because if you're going to ever try him out now, try him out early. Correct. We know what Agha Salman brings to the table. We don't quite know how Saud Shakil would fare, and I think now is the time. You play him versus Netherlands. You might even play him against Sri Lanka. If he comes good, you've got a solid 11. But see, the thing is that even if you don't play one of these guys and bring in another bowler, if you want to shore up the bowling resources, Shadab Khan does provide you three-dimensional utility, right? Even if he's not bowling well right now. And quite honestly, I think it all comes down to his length. Yep. He's dragging it back too often, or full tosses and pitching it forward too frequently. He's missing out on that good length. And maybe T20s are the reason. Maybe the fact that he hasn't played longer cricket a lot, that's the reason. Pakistan haven't played a lot of ODIs. He's been injured for a lot of them. There are plenty of reasons, but I think Shadab Khan brings so much utility into the team. He is arguably your best fielder of all time. At point, I'd always want him, that he can't get the axe. So if you are going to go for a stronger bowling attack, then one of that positions, not one of that position, that position in particular, the Saud/Salman position will have to be compromised. But I think that, Pakistan have a better middle order than maybe, 2 years ago, because they were falling like a house of cards. Now we've seen Iftikhar come into his groove. And what I love about Ifti Mania is that he can be a man for a crisis. He can steady the ship, and he can attack from ball one. And he absolutely mutilates pace bowlers, right? There's a conception, there's a notion that he cannot play spin. He can play spin. He's just not as good at hitting spin as he is as good as he has hitting pace. That's my take on it. But Ifti has to play. He's got to play every game. And look, these guys, Fakhr, Shadab, Iftikhar, they're also brilliant in the field, right? If you have a catch in the deep, who would you rather have other than Fakhr, Shadab, or Iftikhar? Right. Not many names come to mind.
There is value add to their on the field.
You've got to think along those lines. You've got to think of the fielding.
Last two questions. One, your prediction for Babar, the entirety, the captain and the batter for this World Cup. How do you think he fares? And then two, expectations versus reality. The expectation is, even now, still probably semifinals. And then it's just, once you get to the semis, then I'm not too bothered about final and winning, because that's just, on the day, toss, weather, blah, blah, blah. Just those two, if you want to take a crack for the last two questions.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at the Pakistan expectation versus reality thing first. let's look at it from a range perspective, right? What's the worst that could happen and what's the best that could happen? The worst that could happen is that Pakistan crash and burn. 3 wins out of 9, something along those lines, and they, all hell breaks loose. And we know that'll happen, right? I'll probably have to reconsider my career if that happens because of all the toxicity that we're going to see on social media. But if Pakistan do well, they have it in them to even go all the way. If they're making the semifinals, they can win the goddamn thing, right? Babar Azam as a batter, I have a lot of expectations from. These conditions will suit him. It's a round robin that goes on for eons, and a player of Babar's stature is bound to come good. I just have full faith in that, and I think that we're going to see a few tons in this World Cup. And Babar played exceptionally well in England. There's no reason he doesn't play well in India. He'd have to have an absolute stinker if he doesn't play well. So I have a lot of expectations from Babar, the batter. Babar, the captain, is a question mark just because I feel that these will be batting friendly conditions. And those are conditions where I actually, don't fully trust him as a strategist or tactician. Now, I hope he proves everyone wrong. I almost feel it's personal at this point, how much flack he gets, that I really want Babar Azam to have his moment under the sun. But, I do have some reservations, and I hope that the middle overs thing is sorted. And then also some of the field settings, I think they need to be tighter. He needs to be, not allowing teams to go at cruise control. That's what I feel. And I feel like a lot of pressure is, released during those overs where other teams are just taking singles and it doesn't seem like they're bothering Babar. That I do have an issue with. But he's had a lot of learning. He's had a lot of learning in the Asia Cup as well. You mentioned what the biggest takeaway might be. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's Babar's captaincy and he learns a few things. And I know that he'll be thinking about a lot of things. And he does have a plan. All I want from Babar is to have plans A, B, and C, not just plan A. Because you're good when you're executing plan A. But when that falls through, it seems like Pakistan in absolute disarray. I really hope we don't get to see that.
It's the great Mike Tyson quote. Everyone has a plan to get punched in the mouth. To me, I think the biggest game for Pakistan is actually the Sri Lanka game. I think that's the pivot game. Sri Lanka has never beaten Pakistan in a World Cup. You beat a pretty good Sri Lanka team that just hammered you. Now you have confidence going into the India game, which I think is a what I call a Las Vegas game. You're playing with house money because it doesn't matter if you win or lose. You'd love to win, but if you lose, big whoop, you already got 4 points under your belt. But that's why I think that the pressure on the India game is alleviated if you win the Sri Lanka game. And to me, that's the most important game in the first part of the schedule.
I agree with you. That's a very, very valid point.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hope to, I'm sure I'll be hearing lots of you on the podcast on Twitter. Did you want to plug your podcast and let everyone know where you'll be?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, thank you for inviting me on your show. I didn't know what to expect. Of course, you come across as someone who's educated and, knows his stuff on Twitter, but we've never really interacted like this. So I am really, really impressed by your hosting skills. I thought the tenor and energy of the show was really good. This is a great show for cricket nerds. I definitely vouch for you, and I hope to see you continue doing this. I started off like that, right? I was making my own YouTube videos on my own YouTube channel. So I love it when people take this initiative. And in the last 2 years or 2.5 years since I've been doing this, I've seen so many people try their hand at this. So best of luck to you, and everyone follow Sadi Bhai's show, The Doc, and I think that long may this continue, and I hope you get a lot of success. Like, share, and subscribe, all of that stuff. And if you want to see more of me, I am, very, very active on Twitter. You can find me at Def Mango. And currently I am doing podcasts with Jared Kimber. There are 2 podcasts a week, Uncovered on Mondays and Footmarks on Wednesdays. And then also for Grassroots Cricket, I'm creating regular content, whether that be shorter videos, longer videos, voiceovers. And Pro Sports Podcast is a new venture and it's doing quite well. So if you want a little banter-filled conversation and something lighthearted, which also hits all the right notes and all the important points with respect to cricket, go and follow Pro Sports and watch our podcast over there. But thank you so much for giving me this platform, and it's an absolute privilege to be here.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.